growing up in a small town in rural Ohio, my bike was basically my whole world from about age 10 to 16. We're talking the kind of town where the gas station closed at 8 and people left their doors unlocked and nothing bad ever really happened. That's what made it feel safe. And that's exactly why I never thought twice about riding alone. I had a Trek 820 mountain bike. My parents got me for my 12th birthday, gray and green, nothing special. But I treated that thing like it was a sports car every day after school from spring through fall. And I was on it sometimes with friends, but a lot of the time just by myself. I liked being alone on the bike. There's something about riding through quiet roads with nothing but your own thoughts that I found genuinely peaceful. I knew every road, every shortcut, every trail within a 5-mile radius of my house. Or at least I thought I did. There was this one stretch of road called Millbrook Lane that curved around the backside of an old grain processing facility. The place had been shut down for years before I was even born. The building was still standing, though, just rusting away at the edge of a big open field. I never really rode down that way much because the road was in bad shape. Cracked pavement, weeds splitting through the middle of it, potholes that could swallow a front wheel, and it dead-ended at the field anyway. So there was never much reason to go. But one afternoon in late August, I'd ridden all my usual routes, and I was just bored, looking for something different. It was one of those thick, heavy summer days where the air sits on you like a wet blanket, the kind where you can hear insects buzzing from 50 feet away. I turned down Millbrook and right away noticed how different it felt compared to the other roads I rode. It was quieter somehow, and the trees on either side had grown in enough that they nearly touched overhead in places, making it feel almost like a tunnel. I picked my way around the worst of the cracks and kept going until the pavement just stopped. There was a rusty chain-link fence across the old facility entrance, padlocked, posted with no trespassing signs that were so faded you could barely make out the words. And beyond the fence was the field tall grass, seed heads swaying, and the building off in the distance, maybe 200 yards away. The windows were all gone, just black rectangles in the rusted siding. The roof caved in on the far end. I just sat on my bike for a second, taking it in the way you do when something is ugly but you still can't look away. That's when I noticed the man. He was standing at the far end of the field near the fence line on the opposite side of the facility, just standing there, not moving, facing my direction. My first thought was that it was one of those scarecrow things, the kind some farmers put out, even though there wasn't really a crop to protect out there. But then I noticed it was wearing what looked like a dark jacket, and its proportions were just right, the height, the width of the shoulders. I squinted, trying to convince myself it was a post or piece of equipment, something that had been left behind. It wasn't. I waved just a small raise of my hand, the way you'd wave at a neighbor from across the yard. Nothing, no response at all. Not even a shift in posture, just standing there, perfectly still. In a way that a person standing outside on a hot August afternoon just doesn't stand. I don't know what made me do it. But I called out to him, something like, "Hey, are you all right, or do you need help?" My voice came out smaller than I expected it to, like the air out there absorbed it. Still nothing from him. I started telling myself all the reasonable explanations. Maybe he was a property owner checking on the land. Maybe he didn't hear me. Maybe he just didn't feel like engaging with some random kid on a bicycle. All very reasonable. I started backing my bike up to turn around and leave, and when I looked back one more time, he had moved, not by a lot, but he had shifted closer to the road. definitely closer to where I was standing than he had been 30 seconds ago. I want to be clear that I did not see him move. I looked away, and then looked back, and the distance between us had changed, and he was still just standing there, still completely still, like he hadn't moved at all. I didn't say anything else. I didn't wait to see what came next. I turned my bike around and pedaled back up Millbrook Lane, faster than I think I'd ever pedaled anything in my life. I kept looking back over my shoulder the whole way, expecting to see him at the edge of the road or following alongside the fence. But the road stayed empty behind me. Every time I turned around, it was just the empty, cracked pavement and the tunnel of trees. I didn't slow down until I hit the main road and saw a car pass. I sat there on the shoulder for probably 2 full minutes, just breathing and trying to process what I had just seen when I got home. I mentioned it to my older brother casually, the way you would when you're still half convincing yourself nothing happened. I told him about the figure in the field at the old grain facility, and the way it moved without moving. He went quiet, in a way I wasn't expecting from him. My brother wasn't someone who spooked easily. He asked me whereabouts in the field it was standing, and I described the far fence line near the back corner of the building. He went pale. He told me that a man had been found dead out near that facility about 4 years before I was born, a worker from the processing plant who had stayed behind the night the place shut down and never made it home. They found him at the back corner of the property near the fence line. I don't know what I saw out there. I've thought about it a lot over the years, and I've never been able to land on a satisfying explanation. It could have been a trespasser or a squatter living in the building, or it could have been something else. I never rode back down Millbrook Lane after that day, and my brother, who grew up in that town, his whole life told me he'd never ridden down there either. I asked him why he said he didn't want to say before. Because he didn't want to scare me. I want to preface this one by saying I am not someone who gets rattled easily. I've been road cycling seriously for about 5 years, and I've logged probably thousands of miles at this point. I do long solo rides regularly. I've ridden in the rain, in the dark, on routes where I haven't seen another person for 30 miles. I say that because I want you to understand that what happened on this particular ride genuinely scared me. And it takes something real to do that. This was 2 summers ago. I'd been pushing my mileage up, and I'd mapped out a new 40-mile loop that took me through some county roads I'd never ridden before. I used to love that. Finding new roads. Roads that weren't on any of the popular cycling apps, just empty county roads with no shoulder and good pavement. I set out around 7 in the morning, figuring I'd be home by noon, plenty of time before the day got too hot. The first half of the ride was genuinely perfect. Cool morning air, almost no traffic, flat open. Farmland on either side, that kind of still early morning light that makes everything look a little golden. I felt good. Legs felt strong. Everything was clicking around mile 22. I hit a small town, barely a town really. More like a handful of buildings clustered around a crossroads. There was a Marathon gas station, and I stopped to refill both of my water bottles and grab a pack of chews. I was inside maybe 4 minutes when I came back out. A dark-colored pickup truck had pulled into the lot that wasn't there when I went in. It was just sitting there, idling, not parked at a pump, not parked near the entrance, just kind of sitting in the middle of the lot. The driver was watching me, not the way people sometimes glance at a cyclist, the way you'd glance at anything mildly interesting in a gas station lot. Actually watching me turned in his seat, facing me. I made eye contact for a second, and he didn't look away. Just kept watching. I put my bottles in their cages, buckled my helmet, got on my bike and pulled out of the lot, trying not to think about it, not even a mile down the road. I checked my mirror, the little handlebar mirror I have on my bike. And the truck was behind me, moving slowly, keeping pace. Not close, maybe 100 yards back. I told myself to calm down. People drive slowly on county roads. Maybe he was looking for an address or something. I made my next turn onto the county road I had planned to take, a smaller route, less traveled, which was why I picked it. I checked the mirror. The truck turned too. Okay. So now my stomach dropped a little. I checked my phone for signal and got that hollow feeling when I saw one bar blinking in and out, basically nothing. I picked up my pace, not sprinting, but pushing it, and watched the mirror. He sped up too. I eased off slightly to see what would happen. He slowed down, okay? So this was happening at this point. I had about 18 miles left of my loop, and I was on a road with no houses, no businesses, no driveways, even. Just open fields on both sides and flat empty road ahead. The truck kept following at that same distance, never getting closer, never falling back 3 miles of this, 3 miles of checking that mirror every 30 seconds. Seeing that truck sitting back there, I started going through my options because I needed a plan. And I needed one fast. I couldn't outrun a truck on a bike. I had no cell service to call anyone. I couldn't turn around without riding directly at him. The road ahead of me was empty, and I had no idea when that was going to change. I remember thinking very clearly that I needed a witness. That was the thing that I needed most. Just another human being present, and then maybe 2 miles ahead, I saw orange. A road cone, and behind it, a county maintenance truck parked on the shoulder. 2 workers were out near a drainage ditch on the right side of the road. I've never been so relieved to see road workers in my entire life. I made my decision about a 1/4 mile out from them. I rode up to those 2 men and stopped my bike right there next to them and said something like, "Hey, how's it going?" in the loudest, most casual voice I could manage, like we were old friends, like I'd planned to stop here. I heard the pickup come up behind me and kept my eyes on the workers talking about nothing, asking about the road, repair, whatever. I heard the truck slow almost to a stop and then creep past us. Kept my head down, didn't look at the driver, didn't acknowledge the truck at all. One of the workers, an older guy with a sunburn and a reflective vest. He watched the truck go by and then looked back at me with an expression that told me he understood exactly what was going on. He asked me quietly if everything was all right. I told him what had been happening for the last 3 miles, and his face went serious in a way that was both reassuring and alarming. He said that road had a reputation, that other cyclists had reported similar things out there before. Similar things. I asked him what that meant exactly, and he just kind of shook his head and said it wasn't a road he'd want his kids riding on alone. The other worker had been keeping an eye on the direction the truck had gone, and he said something that made my skin go cold. He said the truck had turned around on an open road for no reason. It had just reversed course and gone back the direction it came. The older worker didn't hesitate. He told me to put my bike in the back of their truck, and he drove me into the next town himself. We watched the road behind us the whole way there. I didn't see the pickup again. I filed a report that day, gave the make and color of the truck a partial plate. I'd had the sense to glance at it when it passed us and memorize the first 3 characters. I don't know what came of it. I never heard back. I still ride, still do long solo routes, but I've changed some things. I always share my live location with at least 2 people before any long ride. Now I have a small emergency device that sends a satellite signal in case I lose cell coverage and I stay off that particular road. The thing that I keep coming back to is that comment the worker made about other cyclists reporting similar things out there. How many other times did this happen before me? How many times did someone not happen to spot a road crew at the right moment? I don't like sitting with that question, but I can't stop asking it. This still bothers me the most, not because it's the most dramatic, or because something catastrophic happened, but because of how close it came to going a completely different way. I was 13 at the time. My best friend Dan lived 4 houses down from me, and the two of us were inseparable that summer. Neither of us had phones yet. This was still the era of telling your mom you'd be home before dark and actually meaning it. Our town had a little strip mall about 2 miles from our neighborhood. Nothing exciting. A dollar store, a pizza place, a laundromat, and this little arcade spot that had maybe 15 machines, and a guy behind a counter who sold nachos and slushies. It was not glamorous, but it was ours, and we loved it. We went probably twice a week, all summer long, always leaving by 6 or 6:30. So we'd be home well before dark. Our parents knew exactly where we were, knew the route we took, knew how long it should take us, the kind of routine that parents eventually stop worrying about because it's been fine so many times. This particular evening in late July, Derek and I were in the middle of a serious Mortal Kombat tournament at the arcade. It was best of 7, and we'd been going back and forth, and neither of us wanted to leave mid-tournament by the time we finally settled it. Derek won, for what it's worth, and got our bikes from the rack outside. The sky was already doing that deep purple thing it does just before the light goes out for real. We weren't panicked about it. We were 2 miles from home. We knew the route. It would take 15 minutes tops. We'd been riding these roads for 3 years. We got about half a mile down the main road that ran back toward our neighborhood when I noticed a car keeping pace with us. It had come up from behind slowly and then just sort of settled in alongside us rather than passing. At first, I thought maybe the driver was just being cautious around cyclists, waiting for a safe moment to pass. That happens all the time, and you appreciate it, honestly. But the road ahead was completely clear, and the car wasn't passing, and the window was down on the passenger side. There was a man driving. I'd put him somewhere in his 40s, plain-looking, light-colored jacket. He said something to us, but between the wind and the sound of our tires on the road, I couldn't quite make it out. I made the mistake of leaning slightly toward the car to hear better. He said, "Do you need a ride home just like that? Do you need a ride home?" Dan was on my left, closer to the shoulder, and I was closer to the car on the right. I could see Dan had heard it too. We both said no thanks, roughly at the same time, and kept riding. The car stayed level with us. The man said something like, "It's getting dark out. You boys should really let me help you." And there was something about the way he said it. Not aggressive, not loud, very calm, very reasonable sounding, like he was doing us a favor. Like we were the ones being difficult. That calm is what scared me. More than if he had been aggressive, I said no. Again louder this time, and without looking at him. Said, "Our dads are right down the street," which was not true at all, but felt like the right thing to say. He didn't respond to that, and the car just kept rolling along next to us, said quietly to Derek next street. We turned and Dan said, "Okay." Without hesitation, we hit the next intersection, and both of us cut hard left onto a residential block without signaling. Without slowing down, just turned and hammered the pedals. I heard the car slow to a stop behind us at the intersection. I did not look back. We flew down that block, and I kept calling turns to Derek. "Left here, right here. cutting through the neighborhood in a way that a car couldn't easily follow. We used a cut-through between two houses that led to a cul-de-sac. I'd been through 100 times on my bike, but no car could navigate. We came out the other side onto our street and didn't slow down until we were in my driveway. We both just stood there, straddling our bikes, breathing hard, not saying anything for a second. Dan finally said, "What just happened?" I told my mom immediately. Everything. Exactly as it happened. I remember she stopped what she was doing and sat down, which was not something she normally did when I told her things. She called Dan's mom and then called the police non-emergency line. We described the car, the driver, what he'd said. The general area, it happened, no plate number, because neither of us had thought to look. The officer on the phone was kind, but clear, that without more to go on, there wasn't much they could do. No crime had technically been committed. A man had driven next to two kids and offered them a ride, and that was all that happened. Now, technically, Dan and I didn't go back to the arcade for the rest of that summer, which felt unfair in the way that things that happen to kids always feel unfair. We hadn't done anything wrong. The part that really stuck with me came a few weeks later. My mom was at a neighborhood block party talking to people on our street, and she came home and sat me down. She told me that two other kids in our town had reported something nearly identical. That same summer, a car pulling alongside them on their bikes, a man offering them a ride home. Different descriptions of the car, different areas of town, different kids who didn't know each other. She said one of those instances, the kid had been alone. I've thought about that a lot over the years. Dan and I had each other that night. Two kids on bikes are harder to manage than one. Two kids can make a decision and act on it together without having to think about it. Two sets of eyes watching the road. I don't know what would have happened if I had been riding alone that night, or if Dan hadn't been right there when we made that turn. I don't know what would have happened to that kid who was alone. I genuinely don't know, and nobody was ever caught. Years went by, and nothing, whoever was doing it, either stopped or got better at not being reported. Neither option is particularly comforting. I have a younger sister who started riding her bike around the neighborhood by herself when she was about 10. And the first thing I did was sit down with her and tell her that if a car ever pulled up next to her and the driver said anything at all, she was to ride in the opposite direction immediately. Not to be polite, not to answer, not to think about it, just to go. I think about that evening often, specifically when I'm out riding at dusk and a car slows down next to me. Even now, even as an adult, my hand goes to my handlebars a little tighter. I think about it every single time. I want to add a fourth account before I wrap this up, because it came in from a viewer after I put out a call for stories, and it was too good not to include. This one was submitted by a woman who rides competitively. She asked me not to use her name, but gave me permission to share this. She was doing a solo training ride on a Wednesday morning a few years back on a stretch of road she'd ridden probably 50 times before. About 12 miles from home, she passed a man sitting on a folding chair, right at the edge of the road, in front of a field. Not at a house, not at a mailbox, just a man sitting in a lawn chair at the side of a rural road. She thought it was odd, but kept going. 6 miles later, she turned around to do the return leg of her route, which took her back past the same spot, and the man was still there. Still sitting in the chair. She was on the opposite side of the road, heading the other direction now. And she noticed he had turned the chair to face her direction of travel, so he was still facing her. She told herself he'd probably just moved the chair to get out of the sun or something. 2 weeks later, she did the same route. Same spot, same man, same chair she rode past. And looked back and watched him turn the chair as she passed, tracking her. She changed her route 3 weeks after that. She drove past the spot in her car just to see the chair was there. Sitting empty at the side of the road, she never saw the man again. After that, she told me she has absolutely no explanation for what she saw or what his intent was, but that the deliberateness of it. The chair always positioned to face the direction of oncoming cyclists. That part never stopped bothering her. She still rides competitively, but she keeps a camera on her helmet now and shares her routes with 2 people before every solo ride, something that small. A man in a chair at the side of a road permanently changed how she rides. That's what this kind of thing does. It doesn't have to be a dramatic confrontation to get inside your head. Sometimes all it takes is someone just watching, just always watching.